So U.S. Vice President JD Vance weighed in on trade talks with Canada at a fundraising event this week. These details come from reporting from our colleagues at the Canadian Press. According to audio provided to the Canadian Press, Vance called Prime Minister Mark Carney a very sweet guy. But Vance said Carney comes in and puffs his chest out and says, "I'm going to, out-tough Donald Trump." Vance went on to say, "It's hilarious because Carney presents this as some victory for Canada when fundamentally, they climb down on a lot of issues." Vance then turns his attention to Pierre Poilievre, calling the Conservative leader a non-entity in trade talks. But Vance said his longtime friend, Conservative MP Jamil Javani, has been helpful, saying this random MP who has a good relationship with us has been a pretty effective advocate. Poilievre was asked about Vance's comment about Javani earlier today.
I told all my members of Parliament to use every single contact they had to fight for Canada and Canadian jobs. And I reiterate that to any of our MPs or any Canadian. If you have contacts south of the border, use those to put pressure to fight for tariff-free trade so that we can protect our industries and have renewed access to the biggest and most lucrative market anywhere on earth.
Rachel, I'm going to come to you. JD Vance says Mark Carney tried to out-tough Donald Trump. What do you make of that framing and how that might play back here at home?
Well, I mean, I'll touch on Pierre Poilievre because I'm sure that's what people are wondering about. But could you imagine if Pierre Poilievre just marched down to Washington and said, "I'm going to actually get involved firsthand in these negotiations"? I mean, he'd be slaughtered at home for doing so. And what Pierre has made clear since the beginning of these negotiations is that Mark Carney is the prime minister and he's here to support him. We knew Jamil Javani was down in Washington. We've been talking about it for months, and it's no surprise that JD Vance, who he has a long relationship with, would recognize that. And it's nice to know that that relationship is making inroads on those negotiations. It is surprising to hear him talk so off the cuff about Mark Carney, especially when we as Canadians have very little insight into the role the Prime Minister is making in Washington. And so it's a little nerve-wracking to hear him address our Prime Minister and our chief negotiator there in such terms. But we can't expect anything from this American administration. They are pretty off the cuff, and I think that's what I'd chalk this up to.
Jono, I mean, in terms of the comments that Vance made about Pierre Poilievre calling him a non-entity, it's one thing to be restrained, as Pierre Poilievre has framed himself as being, as not intervening, in terms of the trade talks. It's another thing to be called a non-entity by the Vice President of the United States. So your thoughts on what that tells us about the state of the Conservative Party?
I mean, JD Vance thinks that Mark Carney's hilarious. I think JD Vance is hilarious. I don't think he thinks much about the Conservative Party. I don't think the Conservative Party is a factor in this, nor should they be there in the opposition. But I think what he's doing is probably on behalf of his friend, whether his friend Jamil Javani asked him to do it or he's doing it on his own. He's trolling Pierre Poilievre. That's what he's doing. I don't think it has any purpose in terms of the negotiations or where we stand in terms of will a deal be signed tonight or not. I think it's completely on the side of that. I think it's just a matter of him trolling Pierre Poilievre. And then Poilievre's put in a position where it's an obvious question media is going to ask. And it demonstrates the weakness of Poilievre, of any opposition leader. They can't get involved directly. But then he says, anybody who knows anybody in the States, go down and help us get a zero tariff deal with the U.S., which is also ridiculous. So sort of in a corner. I don't know that I feel bad for him, but I don't know how he would get out of that anyways.
Laura, how do you think Pierre Poilievre handled that when he said, sort of pivoted in that question that he faced about, hey, your guy's down there and his best friend, the vice president, is saying these things, and Pierre Poilievre said, hey, if he can help, then that's great. What do you think about how he handled it?
I mean, look, I think he handled it kind of the best way that he could. I'm not sure it would be helpful for Mr. Poilievre to be complimented by the Trump administration. That might be worse in some respects. Maybe being called a non-entity is actually the best thing that could happen to him. I think JD Vance's comments from the Canadian perspective, from the public's perspective, is just a window into the arrogance of President Trump and his inner circle. I think. There's clearly been some issues within the Conservative caucus. There's been some caucus management issues. There were some questions at the time whether Mr. Giovanni had sought permission to go down to Washington. I'm not sure it's a blessing for Mr. Vance to be complimenting him, whether that's helpful to Mr. Poilievre. But I think the answer of, we need all hands on deck and everyone should be down there trying to help. I don't think that's unhelpful, particularly for the Conservative cause. And I think this is a moment of opportunity for the opposition to really question critically the Carney government's approach here. And so I do think that the ball is in the Liberal government's court now to explain the contours of this deal and why they have made certain decisions.
But Karina, just on this, of course the leader of the opposition is a non-entity in trade deals because every leader of the opposition is a non-entity in trade deals. This is the job of the federal government in consultation with the provincial governments and with all the sectors. So it's not really an insult because I don't know, it's not like when CETA was being negotiated, the leaders of the various leaders of the oppositions were at the table and that. It's just not the way these things are done. But this secret recording, this Jamil Billy elegy, do we think that was secretly recorded or do we think that was strategically recorded? Because how do these comments by the vice president at a U.S. fundraiser magically end up in the hands of the Canadian press?
Right.
Isn't that an interesting chain of events and series of custody? It's almost like somebody wanted to suck up to Trump, denigrate Mark Carney, dismiss Pierre Poilievre, and praise the random MP who spoke at my wedding, not me, but JD Vance's wedding, in a way that makes him look helpful and useful, the other guy weak, and the other guy not relevant. So it seems like a play to help Mr. Giovanni raise his profile. The risk with that is this is a deal that threatens the auto sector, and Jamil Giovanni represents an auto riding. So if he is getting credit for a deal that could cost jobs to his constituents, how helpful is this one way or another? So there's everything with the United States and with this administration is double-edged. There's one edge is sharper than the other, and it's usually to the detriment of the Canadian side.
Appreciate everyone and our special guest giving their insights on this. The Power Panel today, David Cochrane, Rachel Siegel, Jonathan Kalis, and Laura Stone.